We usually think of a hit TV show as, well, just entertainment, right? Something to binge watch. But what if a sweet, simple teen romance could also be this incredibly profound cultural text, something worthy of a deep academic dive? That is exactly what we're looking at today. We're breaking down a research paper that looks at the Netflix series Heartstopper, not just as a great story, but as a powerful visual language that's actually changing how queer lives are shown on screen. So, to really get why Heartstopper is such a big deal, we kind of have to rewind and look at the history it's pushing against. For the longest time, if you saw a queer character on screen, you could pretty much bet their story was going to be tied up with suffering, being an outsider, or just straight-up tragedy. They were often used as cautionary tales, their identities treated like a problem that needed to be solved or, even worse, punished. Which leads to the big question, right? How did this show, a story built on kindness and small, everyday moments, manage to become so revolutionary? How did it turn the simple story of two boys falling for each other into a powerful tool that, as this research argues, could actually be used in a classroom? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. Okay, so first things first, let's really set the stage and look at the media world Heartstopper walked into. To get the full impact of what this show does, we have to understand the old, tragic storytelling cycle it so intentionally breaks. Now, to understand the show's setting, a high school, we have to see it through the eyes of these researchers. They make the point that schools, historically, have been places that really enforce conformity. They're not just teaching you algebra, they're teaching you what's normal when it comes to gender and sexuality. And that often means silencing anyone who doesn't fit neatly into that box. And that pressure from society, it was totally reflected in the movies and TV shows we watched. These old narratives pretty much all relied on the same set of predictable and honestly super depressing tropes. Being queer was linked with being an outcast. The stories were all about pain, and their lives almost always ended badly. The message was loud and clear. Being different leads to suffering. So Heartstopper's answer to all this isn't just to tell a happier story. It's to tell its story in a totally different language. The researchers argue that the show uses this very specific set of visual cues, all these signs and symbols, to invent a new way of seeing queer love, one that's so powerful because it feels so normal. The academic tool the researchers use to decode this language is called semiotics. Now that sounds super complicated, I know, but it's really just the study of how things create meaning. It's about looking at everything, a color, a sound, a camera angle, even a small gesture, as a sign that's sending us a message. This is the lens they use to pull the whole show apart. In their analysis, they break these signs down into 3 levels. First, you've got the feeling. That's the immediate sensory stuff, like colors and sounds. Second is the action, how the characters are interacting, what they're doing. And third, you have the meaning, how all that stuff connects to bigger ideas in our culture. Think of it like this. That swell of romantic music you hear, that's the feeling. 2 characters finally holding hands, that's the action. And the 2 of those together creating that universal sense of first love, that's the meaning. And this is a brilliant example of how it all works. Just look at the insane contrast and how the show presents Charlie's 2 relationships. With Nick, everything is full of light, color, music. It signals a relationship that's all about mutual care. But with Ben, it's the total opposite. The scenes feel confined, silent, oppressive. The show is using these sensory feelings to scream at us which relationship is healthy and which is toxic. And it does it all without a single character having to spell it out. The colors are a huge part of this new language. The analysis points out this really consistent code. Yellow keeps popping up around Charlie, symbolizing his warmth and energy. Meanwhile, blue often shows up with Nick, representing his journey inward, his sensitivity, and his initial confusion. When they're together, the colors just work. It's a visual harmony. And of course, we have to talk about the famous animations. According to this semiotic analysis, those aren't just a cute stylistic choice. The leaves, the little sparks, the electric flashes, those are signs. They literally make the invisible visible. They are a visual stand-in for the character's internal feelings, turning something like a crush or a jolt of connection into something we can actually see on screen. It's genius. Okay, so let's zoom in on one of the most important parts of the whole series, something the research paper really focuses on, Nick's journey of self-discovery, a journey that, for so many young people today, starts with a very quiet, very personal question typed into a Google search bar. The analysis of this scene is just fascinating. You have Nick, all alone in his room, surrounded by the blue light of his computer screen, searching, "Am I gay?" Every little detail here is a sign. That blue light points to his inner turmoil, the music reflects his confusion, and the very act of searching online, that points to a much bigger social meaning. A whole generation figuring themselves out alone on the internet because our schools so often fail to give them an inclusive education. And it's not just what you see. The soundtrack is doing some heavy lifting here too. The choice of the song "Why Am I Like This" is anything but random. It acts as a direct sign, basically giving a voice to the exact question that's swirling around in Nick's head. The music literally becomes his internal monologue. But, figuring yourself out is only half the battle, right? The analysis also digs into the whole social world of Heartstopper, the friends, the family, the bullies, and how the community around you can either help you or hurt you on that journey. And this scene at the party is a perfect example. Nick sees his friends Tara and Darcy, who are a lesbian couple, just openly and happily kiss. Now for Nick, this is a huge moment. It's more than just seeing his friends. It's a moment of profound identification. The research calls it queer visibility as inspiration. It's this powerful sign that shows Nick what's possible, that queer love can be public and joyful and celebrated. This series also shows a really realistic range of support systems. The analysis points out the incredible acceptance from family and friends, which is such a powerful contrast to all those old stories about rejection. But it doesn't sugarcoat things either. It shows the school as this mixed bag, a place with both terrible bullying and little pockets of safety, which reflects the complicated world that so many teens actually have to navigate. And this all leads up to that final rugby match. When Nick literally walks off the field to go find Charlie, the researchers see this as so much more than just a romantic gesture. It is a powerful public break from what society expects of him. He's rejecting the pressure to be the tough rugby lad, and instead, he's choosing emotional honesty and caring for someone else. So what does this all add up to? Well, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important argument in the whole paper: how all this deep analysis can translate from our TV screens into the real world, and, believe it or not, right into the classroom. The core idea is this: Heartstopper is so good at what it does, so effective in its storytelling, that it can actually be used as a curricular artifact. Basically, what the researchers are saying is that this show isn't just entertainment you passively watch. It's a rich cultural text you can actively use to teach, to spark debate, and to get critical conversations started in schools. I mean, just look at the possibilities here. By breaking down scenes from the show, teachers can open up these vital conversations about really complex topics like consent, diversity, and human rights. It becomes a hands-on tool to help students understand how the stories they consume are built. That's media literacy, and ultimately to help build a school that feels safer and more inclusive for everybody. At the end of the day, the real power of Heartstopper is in its simplicity. By showing queer affection as something that's gentle and normal and full of joy, it gives all of us a new symbolic vocabulary. It provides a positive script that actively fights back against decades of stigma and tragedy, and it shows us a different, much more hopeful reality. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. This deep dive into a show like Heartstopper proves that representation isn't just about seeing yourself on screen. It's about giving people the tools, the language, and the emotional scripts that can actually help build a more accepting world. It really makes you wonder, what is the true power of a story told well?